All right, podcast is live. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm doing this a little differently. I do it on Zoom, so that way we have some more video content for everyone. But we're jumping right into it. Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand. This book I have heard a lot about, just tons from people in the marketing community, people outside of the marketing community. So it's really started to be pretty prevalent out there. So I decided to buy the audiobook. I don't like reading marketing books as much these days. Listening in the audio form or watching videos is kind of my go-to way of getting info. So I listened to the audiobook, went on many walks around the neighborhood, and slowly but surely made my way through the book. I want to say it was around 6-7 hours worth of listening, so not too long. But I have 4 pages of notes for you. Very excited to dive into things, and this book is revolutionary for a lot of companies. So this is going to be a great podcast, and you're going to get some real great nuggets about marketing and how to improve your business. Let's get started.
Thank you for checking out the Media Marketing Podcast, a place where you can learn all things media and marketing related. Don't miss a beat in boosting your business and your brand. In each episode, you'll gain valuable insights, tools, and strategies to apply to your marketing efforts. And now your host, Brian Cargill.
Okay, so Donald Miller. I guess he had written a book previous to this one, didn't really catch wind and didn't really have success. And this book came out and did really well. And he mentions very quickly out of the gates, it's because of story. This whole book is sprinkled with stories throughout that keep you captivated and inspired. And for some reason, it just, for educational purposes, stories stick in our brains psychologically. So he starts off with talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which, debate if Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, holds the test of time. We'll see if it continues to be something that people completely agree with, but for the most part, I think it is, it's been around and people somewhat look to it. But for those of you that don't know, the Maslow hierarchy of needs, created by Maslow, who I believe was a psychologist, but he talked about the lowest level of psychological needs. So we need to, or physiological needs. So think of shelter, all the things that you have in place that just make your body run, water, access to food resources. And then he bumps up to safety needs. Again, shelter. And then the next need is belongingness and feeling love needs fulfilled. And the next tier up is esteem needs. And then at the very top is self-actualization. So he talks about these needs, and this is who your audience is, understanding what their core values are, where they're at in life. And so where does your company come in and fulfill one of those basic foundational needs? For most of the book, he talks about kind of the self-actualization. A lot of businesses are transforming their clients, making their lives better. Think of Apple, for example, creating a cell phone or a computer. That's self-actualization. Next, he goes into story arc. So what are the rules of a really strong story? And he was pretty much, you set a hook, you kind of have a promise for your customer that, hey, you're going to produce some kind of outcome. And he dives into a little bit deeper. For the sake of my notes, I decided to put down that, like, the 4 chord method. So there really is like a foundation or a similar story that can be used over and over again across different, across the test of time. And so the 4 chords, I was thinking, like, when you play a musical instrument, there's a famous song out there where all you need is 4 chords and you can pretty much play everything. And he uses a similar analogy with this book. You really only need to know the core foundation of a story to be able to share that with people time and time again. And he brings up the phenomena that we have, that when you're watching a movie, you often feel like, oh man, I feel like this plot is the same thing over and over again. And that's because it's true. Oftentimes we see, good guy, and they're faced with some kind of challenge. They deny the challenge, and then what happens is a guide comes and helps them. And so we'll get into that a little bit later, but that kind of jogged in my memory what it was, the foundation of a story. and all those other things that we learned in grade school: setting, building up to a climax, having a resolution. And that's usually the narrative that people fall in love with. And then why do you tell a story? Well, it's really to hold people's attention. People don't really care about the features and how large your factory is, how many employees you have, maybe where you're located, but what they really care about is a story. Where can they see themselves as your customer? Is that a really easy process for them to envision themselves? And then are you going to get them where they want to go? Can they trust you? And he talks about having a customer-centric narrative, where somebody wants something, they encounter a challenge, and then the guide, which is your company, helps guide them along the way. And he says, yeah, if it's not customer-centric, then it is just noise, because why should the customer care? You're making them think too much. They have all these other list of hierarchy of needs, and if you're making them really think outside of the box on how to connect the dots between their problem, their challenge, and your company, then they're already moving on, because they have so many. People are being bombarded with so many other things that you need to be quick to the point and make it easy. He brings up a couple examples of how story is really effective. You think of Hunger Games, and talking about story, how it's effective, and how also there's a guide. So in Hunger Games is Katniss Everdeen, really good archer in the Hunger Games, but she had a guide, a mentor, which was Haymitch. And then he talks about Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker has Obi-Wan Kenobi. Then he also actually uses the example of how that those are guides, but then he talked about just really the power of story in someone who embodied that out in our real day-to-day life, which was Steve Jobs, who came back from Pixar. He had left Apple, had been let go by the board, went and started Pixar, which is a storytelling animation company. So he understood the power of story, and then came back to Apple and brought some of those storytelling elements to a lot of the campaigns and their approach to the different products. You think about some of those famous releases of Steve Jobs talking about you can fit, 1,000 songs in your pocket. That's a story. Okay, so talking about why the customer should care. And then he even talks about passing the grunt test. And for people that don't know, grunt test is kind of like a caveman. They make grunting noises. So is your message easy for whoever your customer to understand? Are they going to get to the point pretty quickly? Geico has taken this to extreme so easy that a caveman can do it. But that just talks about the simplicity of what they do, and it creates an association. That's a little bit of a stretch on the grunt test, but really can people in a matter of minutes or seconds just understand what your organization is. So, and that talks about what we've always been talking about on this podcast, which is like kind of brand alignment. Does your video reflect the logo? Does it reflect what the mission and values of your organization are? Is it all in alignment? If anyone watches one bit of it, do they understand, hey, is this still the same brand, even if they are on a different platform, like a podcast, or if they're on a YouTube? And then we talk about those guides. They give more examples. I have some of them that we've kind of fallen in love with over time. Yoda and Mr. Miyagi, and they have Bill Bowerman, I believe, from Nike. But yeah, really at the end of the day, simplifying, educating, and guiding your customers. Something that I never heard before is they talk about challenging your audience. I think sometimes we say, hey, call today or something like that, but really putting a challenge that they can rise to meet the occasion, really putting the ball in their court. I think I remember the famous Got Milk campaign. Do you have milk? That was the challenge. And that was a successful campaign, dovetailed with famous athletes that they brought on the stage with the milk mustache. And then they talk about, he uses the example, I use the Got Milk one, but the successful presidential campaign of the challenge, and then identifying where you want to go in the future. So he talks about Bill Clinton's campaign, which was the bridge to the future. So you can really clearly visualize, like, what is he doing? No, he's creating a bridge from where we are now to the future. That's a great visual for people. If you don't have that visual element, or it's not simplified for people, it's really going to go over their heads, or if it's too ambiguous. And then he said that the common question that all audiences are asking themselves is, can this brand get me what I want? Are they trustworthy? Are they going to follow through? And then he talks about having empathy. Everyone wants to be seen, heard, and understood. Can you do that with your brand? And then he talks about something that I think I've often in the past missed the mark on, which is people want to see their brands as an equal and not as an authority. Sometimes I look at, I guess this can get misconstrued, but like a guide, someone that's helping you along the way. Yeah, people don't want to be told what to do along the way. They want to be helped. They want to feel supported, feel like they have the resources and someone that can answer their questions as they're going through something that's challenging. And so it's nice to have a guide that's already been there, that can, that's been in the trenches, has already done the work, but they can help you get there more efficiently and have a better experience along the way. He talks about your brand is like a person. So a lot of this, empathy at the end of the day, putting yourself in your customer's shoes, seeing the world from their perspective, using that imagination muscle that we all have to see the world from someone else's perspective. So are they reliable? Will they, can they make your life better? Does the brand that you're going to work with, do they respect you? So those are some questions that a customer would ask themselves. And of course, there's plenty more examples in here. Sorry, took a sip of water. But the guide, they talk about a really great example, more closer to modern day, which is the Moneyball example. Jonah Hill, I think a lot of people remember that scene. Brad Pitt goes in the meeting, comes out, and he was just baffled by how that whole process went down. And he was like, what was, the fact that Jonah Hill was able to walk in there, whisper in someone's ear and make that much of an impact. Brad Pitt goes back to him and figures out that Jonah Hill has this formula, and then the rest is history for how that movie plays out. But Jonah Hill is a guide for Brad Pitt. He has the formula, has the plan that's going to get him from point A to point B. When you have that plan, when you're providing it for customers, can you easily outline the steps for what it takes for them to work with you, and then envisioning some of those steps before they work with you, while they work with you, and then after the customer has left, what else can they do? I'm just going to close the blinds over here. It's getting a little bright on one side. A big thank you to our sponsors over at songtub.com. That's right, song or music and a tub, like a bath, but more fun to say. Tub. Anyway, you can check out Songtub's website for any of your music needs. In fact, the song playing in the background right now is from Songtub. So why pick them over anyone else? Well, they curate the music. And I know the guys, so that means I know that they're selecting great music for your project. A lot of other companies will brag about how many songs they have, maybe 100,000, 200,000, maybe even 1 million. But honestly, I don't have time for that. I don't have the time to just sit down and go next, a song not so great, trying to figure out where the best music is. Songtub.com, great place to get your music. And now I'm excited to offer you the first month for free if you go to songtub.com/pro, P-R-O, and we have a promo code for you. Yes, that's right, my name, your host, Brian, B-R-Y-A-N, and that will give you your first month free to have access to a huge music library that you can use towards your next video project, podcast, or any of your general audio needs. Anyway, back to the show. First time doing video at home, so I want to make sure it looks pretty good. Emily gave me a funny look there. You want to make it easy on your website, make it very straightforward for people to figure things out, simplify it. Don't make people have to think too much, so connect those dots. Keep passing that grunt test. And then they also talk about giving freely. This is something that I've seen Gary Vaynerchuk, who we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast before, has done a lot of, which is, give valuable information and you will be rewarded. I think it's tough to do, because oftentimes we're like, oh man, if I put in a lot of work, I want to get paid today. But yeah, kind of that karma, putting things out there in the world, and it just keeps building your brand, and it keeps building up your reliability and who you are as a brand. Because if you're giving away free content, who knows what the paid content could look like. So people might be willing to dig into their pockets to have get something of value. And they might want to kind of reward you for the work that people want to be able to pay you in some way. You hear a lot of stories out there of people that have started businesses that were, maybe a blog that was providing a lot of value for 5 years for someone. They have a great big email list and they never sold a product on it. And then the day that they decide to sell a product, they, make, I don't know, 5 figures, 6 figures, just like that. Just because of the loyalty, and people want to support someone that's helping make their life better. Let's see, another example. They talk about, I'm going to skip that one. They talk about Mayhem from Allstate, but that one's a little bit more complicated. Remind people how the product is going to change their lives. Casting a vision. This one was interesting. Casting a vision of what your customer's life will look like after working with you on your website. That one was huge. For me, I create videos for people, and the vision is that people would show these videos to their clients. So I already had it on my website, but this kind of helped reinforce. I was really happy that I was already doing some of these things intuitively, but that's not always the case for everyone. I would say, yeah, so I have on my website, if the video is not playing, it's a photo of, someone using the video on an iPad, showcasing it to a prospective client or customer. And so that's the vision, is sharing my videos and building that rapport with your customer as a video production company. So so really cast that vision. What is the end result going to look like for your customer? And what's something that was really great, this is more on the psychology side of things. They talk about the motivators, the things that really drive us. And I want to say there were 4. I picked up 3, and here are the 3 that I picked up. One was a motivator for customers is a status update, feeling a sense of completeness, or reaching their full potential. Those are the 3 things that drive us to take action when it comes to working with a company. And so for that first one, status update, this is where Starbucks has just ultimately done a great job. He mentions that in the book that they, because of their reward program, and you want to be able to say to your friends, like, hey, or not to your friends, but it's just nice. They're rewarding you for buying their product, already working with them, and it wants you to keep it incentivizes you, gamifies it to want to keep working with them in the future. And I want to say there's also something to do with the status of like the card that you get with it too, and some other little perks that come with just being part of the rewards program. Maybe you're able to buy a drink for a friend. I'm not in it. Emily, my fiance, would have more insights there. I think she's been on the reward program for a couple of years now, and she's always getting, I benefit, so I guess I shouldn't complain too much, because if we go get coffee, it's always nice to have the rewards for a coffee. But the next point is the completeness example, which I guess he mentions that the tool industry, think about the Lowe's, Home Depots of the world, they've been doing this for a long time, where a tool or a gadget enables you to be complete. It makes you superhuman. So you're able to do things a normal human wouldn't normally be able to do, whether that's, hammer, saw, drill, whatever, you name it. So that was a nice connection for me. The next one is reaching your full potential. And we see this in movies time and time again. And I love that he brought up the movie. I don't know if he brought it up or maybe I put this one in there, but he talks about Rudy, the guy who tried to make it onto the Notre Dame football team, and we're all cheering for the underdog. We all wanted him to reach his full potential. They talk about some other ones, Legally Blonde. They also talk about Dove with their forensic sketch campaign. I don't know how many people really remember that one, how many people, I think this was still probably in the day when people watch commercials. Now you have Netflix, and when a commercial does come on, you go and just pull up your cell phone and barely pay attention. But this one did stand out to me. I remember watching this one as a kid, where they had a forensic sketch artist come in there, and they had women come in and then describe themselves to the sketch artist, and then they had a stranger come in and describe the woman who had just described herself, and they showed the two images, and they were drastically different. And it was kind of eye-opening, and it was a really great insight into the human psyche of how we see ourselves and how others perceive us. And so that one was kind of talking about how to reach your full potential. That showing those women that were talking about themselves in a negative light, maybe seeing that image kind of gives the image from a stranger's perspective, helps them reach their full potential and brings things full circle. So you see a lot of, those are some of the most eye-catching and campaigns that stick out in my mind when it comes to commercials, where you're taking a group of people and radically changing their lives for the better. If you can do that with your product, great. If you can do that outside of your product, you see a lot of companies do that too and get great reward from that. You think about Red Bull. They're helping people reach their full potential, sponsoring a lot of these mega challenging, pushing the limits of the human spirit body out there with some of those events. So very cool when brands do that, and it gets rewarded. So talking about transformation, we're here now on, what is this, page 3 of 4. So I'm making progress for you guys. I put a lot of notes out here, and it was just packed with good nuggets of thoughts and ideas. And like any book, while you're reading, it inspires you to come up with little ways that you can help your own company. So I highly recommend. I'm going to try my best to cover a lot of the book, but like anything, you really benefit when you get it on your own. Let's see. Yeah, kind of transformation. Your brand's helping you become a better version of yourself. He uses the example of Gerber knives. I won't go in too much detail, but essentially, you're cool if you have one. They might be really expensive, but because of how they portray you and how they're received by the public and their track record of being a reliable tool, it passes the cool test. And so, if you're able to truly transform your customer and make their life better, I think of brands out there that are kind of associated with, I don't know, aspirations and trying to be greater. You think of like the Nikes of the world, like you're trying to become like that athlete. You think of, I don't know why this example is coming to mind, but like BMW, like you buy a BMW and there's just something that kind of changes in your life. You're driving around, people kind of see you in that BMW. You spend a portion of your life in there. You kind of like, oh, I'm a BMW owner. You see that with other car brands too, like Jeep and even motorcycles too. That's me going on a tangent, but yeah. So, ask yourself all the time, what would your customer like to become? Where are they going? How are you going to get them to where they'd like to go? And also be asking your customer, he uses the term, would you like to get married with the customer? Because that's what this client relation, it's a relationship. It's a client relationship. So are you ready to work together to try to get them to where they want to go as a guide? Because as a guide, you're seen as an equal, not authority. So it really is kind of that marriage where it's a balancing act. And then he goes into talking about his thoughts on corporations. He has a really great story in there where he's talking about the corporate world and using the analogy of like, hey, out there in the corporate world, there's like bears to hunt, there's treasures to find, there's adventures to be had out there within an organization. And he talks about it in such a compelling way that I'm like, man, I would love to work at that company. Like when you talk about just all the possibilities in a way that doesn't seem so like, I don't know, stale, and that's what it is, corporate. They're like trying to think outside the box and get people excited about the adventure and the journey that's out there. I think there's something about the human spirit that makes us all want to go on journeys. And then we're talking about you being bombarded with 3,000 ads a day. building a story brand into the process for bringing on new hires. So he goes in a lot of different directions that I'm not going to dive into, talking about like building kind of integrating story into your culture of your company. And then he talks about some other tips like website marketing or like things to increase your website, and talks about email marketing. And and then constantly bringing it back to the story. It really reiterates, it drives that home throughout this. It's really an argument for story, but I think we all deep down know that story is impactful. All of us, we're kids at some point. We grew up on the same children's stories, movies, etc. So he says, identify your customer in this context. One, your customer is the character. And then 2, what is their problem? 3, what is your plan? And then 4, what does success look like? He uses another example, the kind of the soccer mom example, for if they want to get a good workout and you are somebody that sells, maybe you say you own a gym or you have like a workout program. It's a lot more enticing than just saying, oh, I own a gym, because then you're creating more work for the client, the customer, the soccer mom, to think, okay, they own a gym, how can that help me? Versus I create short, efficient workouts that allow you to get your workout in between all the thousands of other things you have going on in your life. What's going to appeal to somebody? Oh, the one that's like, okay, identifies who they are, where they fall in all of this, how is it solving their problem, and how is it solving it efficiently? That's the workout convenience, doing the workout program on your own time, the convenience of your own home, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas, maybe the gym owner would say, hey, this is a way to escape from all of that, and have access to some great tools and resources that are going to help you reach your goals faster than you ever dreamed. I don't know, something jazzy like that would be good for the gym owner. Don't assume customers will easily put things together. It needs to be compelling. He talks about the one-liner, identifying what your company does in a single line. You kind of memorize it. And he says, pretend like you're an actor. Really go in the mirror, hone this. And so when you're talking to people, you've said it so many times that it just sounds casual and natural saying it, even though you already know in the back of your mind that you've practiced, it's well rehearsed, and all the words in your one-liner about your company have been carefully calculated. Or not calculated, but carefully outlined and determined what you want to do. So, and he uses the comparison of this one-liner that you have for your business. And I don't know how many people are listening, go to some of these networking events. Sometimes you get the opportunity to say, hey, you got 1 minute to talk about your business. Tell us really quickly. This is where that comes in handy, and it's really helpful and useful. My own 2 cents is that one-liner, the one that you say in front of a group of people at a networking event, might be a little different than who you're talking to individually, because I don't really always want to jump right into business. Sometimes you talk to somebody about something else that is related to what they do, and you learn a little bit more about who they are, and you shift that one-liner to cater to who the audience is at the time. But he talks about James Taylor, and it's actually really interesting. He talks about kind of the concept for a lot of musicians. Here you are a musician. All you ever want to do is get up there on stage and be able to play your music. But sometimes you're only known for one song. So you're playing that one song to every audience for years and years on end. So I think James Taylor, he said his career has been, a couple decades long. And so, he's saying, I forget his top song. I want to say... A cactus knows how to survive. It can endure scorching heat, limited rainfall, and defends itself against critters daily. Your business is no different. To survive harsh conditions, it's important to develop deep roots using media content that'll continuously nourish and support your marketing efforts day after day. Tactus Media is here to help you determine a strategy and create media content. Together, let's map out the next sequence of videos, podcasts, and social media to help your business thrive. Work with Tactus Media, media tactics that stick. Ouch! Visit tactusmedia.com to learn more. Sweet blue eyes, sweet baby blue eyes. Oh gosh, sweet baby Jane. I don't know. One of those. I don't really know as much James Taylor. Sorry, folks. Anyway, talks about values that you can provide on, and where can you provide this value for your customers, and where can you integrate that one-liner along with your values. You can do it in a guide, free online trainings, webinars, put in your software, provide free trials for people. I think it alludes to the AOL disc giving away campaign in the 90s that's really well known in a lot of the marketing books that I read. Giving away free samples is always a way to get a client excited about your product. And this wasn't in his book, but there's a theory by Robert Cialdini, influence, that when you provide value for others, they feel a sense of reciprocity to want to help you in return. So that's also something to consider when providing value, because I think it is sometimes challenging. You're like, oh man, what's going to be the payoff of this resource? Well, you don't know what the payoff is going to be in the near future, but as you keep providing these tools and resources, there's something about doing that provides a good return. I think it's like something, could be good karma, could just be that influence that Robert's talking about. But anyway, he talks about, I would buy the book to learn more about kind of his tips for website building and for email marketing. But one thing on email marketing I do have to say is that he actually said it's a good thing when people leave your email list. And that's what I find out a lot with entrepreneurship and owning a business, is that sometimes things that are looked at as potentially from the outside as like a negative, like, hey, someone left my email list, or someone didn't buy my product, or someone said no or closed the door on me. Trying to look at those as positives, like, I'm okay. So now I've figured out who doesn't like it. So I'm one more no to getting to a yes. So kind of a positive way of looking at life and looking at situations like that. But yeah, when someone leaves your email list, it's a good thing. So you now realize, okay, so they weren't a good match, and they now can move on with their life. Sometimes you find that people that leave your brand, that don't want that information, still refer your brand to other people. So they are wanting to help, but just in different ways. It wasn't a good fit for them, or maybe in the future they want to work with you and they just don't have the budget for it now. So yeah, a lot of this is the long game, but still having that list and providing the value and showing people is building that relationship and still making yourself top of mind for them. Again, people are drawn to transformation. When they work with you, they want their life to be different. They don't want it to be the same. And then he kind of has a statement on the industry as a whole that, people or brands that communicate the clearest. I'm going to just start that from the beginning. People that communicate the clearest often don't have the best products. So that's really sad that there's some people that are really good at marketing, getting the word out there on what their brand does, but their product is, I don't know, not well thought out, doesn't make people's lives radically better, might even hinder their lives. He doesn't mention any in the book, but just something to consider. It talks about clarifying your mission, and StoryBrand can help you do that. They want the good guys to succeed. They did a good job throughout here, like talking about good guys versus bad guys. And yeah, you want your customer client is the good guy, and you want to help them do well. And the bad guy can be something, maybe it's internal. It's all those basic foundations of story that we learn as kids. Is it the protagonist against nature? Is the protagonist against technology? What are you doing to help them solve some of those, dire problems of their life that they're trying to go through? So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'd say go to Donald Miller website, check out this book. It's a good read. I think my synopsis would probably give you a really good head start on a lot of this information, but like anything, I think sometimes reading it gets it more ingrained in your head. But hopefully this kind of generates a conversation. I've been hearing a lot of buzz around this book. A few guests have brought it up on the podcast, so I think it's just good to give everyone a foundation. But just reiterating, even in the marketing world, even in the business world, story is what people remember, is what sticks in their minds, and it's at the end of the day pretty powerful. And I think people try to ignore it as long as they can when they have a business, and it can start to be a hindrance as you keep getting bigger. And so yeah, love to hear people's thoughts. Feel free to share some of your favorite stories. Share this podcast with someone you think that could benefit from learning how to tell a good story about their company. And yeah, I love it. I'm a big fan of stories. Love watching movies. And then, yeah, telling stories, exchanging stories with others, which is something that's so primal to the human spirit, of sitting around a campfire telling stories. And stories are used to guide us and help us along the way. They, some stories are used to keep you away from, venturing too far from the tribe when, talking about monsters that are out there in the forest or in the waters. Some stories are there to inspire us to want to achieve greater things. So some of those stories are real, some of them are made up, but both can motivate you. And that's enough of me rambling about stories. So that's a wrap. Thanks everyone for listening. Until next time. I want to say a big thanks for tuning into the Media Marketing Podcast. Please subscribe to get notifications for new episodes, which are coming out every Thursday morning, or at least we're striving for that. Feel free to visit our Facebook page where you can like and join the media marketing community. This is a good resource for collaborating, sharing ideas with other media creators, marketers, and those just looking to build their network. So until next time.